Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper.
Oh, yeah. Now that you got me on the stage, y'all.
You're not going anywhere.
Let me be very clear about my intentions at Podfest were to meet people. Because if I look for business, then I would have to find business and then look for the people to do it with afterwards. If I could look for the alchemy of the project, the people who when the phone call comes, I know I'm in the right place, right time, because I'm surrounded by the right people. Yeah. And Jodi, you're like living proof of this philosophy and concept of like networking and how I can, like, I don't know, create my own version, my own energy so I can be fruitful and
sure,
in my own confined space, in my rules, my way. We have the freedom to do that now. So thank you.
We do. I love that we have the freedom to do that. Yeah.
That's my favorite thing about podcasts is it just the individualized approach that everyone has. And there's no right way. There is a right way. There's a lot of right ways, actually. Yes. There's a lot of wrong ways, too.
Well, I mean, your audience votes with the right ways, right? It's the audience you develop that gives you the right ways.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? It's like hindsight, right? 2020, when all of a sudden, well, that's what it takes. It takes a performance to get a reaction. It takes a show to build an audience. So that makes sense.
Yeah,
I'm okay
totally.
with that. I recently heard they're bringing back, sort of like Jurassic Park. They're bringing back the dodo bird. Have you heard this yet? Geneticists and scientists have figured out that the dodo bird there's enough information because it's not too long ago that we can do that. And the woolly mammoth. These are the two animals that they're talking about, by the way.
Okay.
I can't wait to see which comes first with the dodo bird, the egg or the bird. Like, I'm so excited to put that test to rest, finally. I think they're trying to figure that one out too, right? Like, I was like, dodo bird, that sounds cool. But like, again, It's just the space of creating the fact that we, as creativists, can create our own, set of rules and boundaries to be successful. Science is expanding the same way. We just experienced that these last few years, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why I talk about sound, right? Science has taken this in leaps and bounds, and we are psychological creatures. And so sound has a really big importance to us. And I think that over the years, that's kind of been lost because of all the video and the visual and all of this stuff being front and center. And not to downplay that at all. That's also important. Our eyes are important.
Yeah.
But as far as sound is concerned, like, that's an evolutionary thing that has kept us alive.
Yeah.
Not only the sight.
Congrats. But I feel like saying congrats to you on behalf, as you represent all the professional audio. What in the last I've been in TV for 25 years, and I've seen television, cable, digital cable, premium cables, and it sort of felt like slow and steady growth. Yeah. The digital space right now with the pluses and the maxes and all, that's exponential growth.
Yeah.
Audio had exponential growth these last 4 years. I mean, there's just the power. It used to be supportive of video, and I think back to like Spielberg and Dolby and like some of the original advances that happened in the beginning part of my life.
Yeah.
It seemed dormant up until these last 4. So what a cool time to be in audio. It makes sense for all of us to finally be attracted to podcasting as business-minded people who want to own our content and leverage it for an audience. What a cool opportunity.
It totally does. Yeah. We all start from somewhere, though. So I want to ask you this question before we get too far ahead.
I love that.
Do you have an early memory of how sound moved you?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to be a Foley artist. Foley.
Oh, really? From little kid?
Little kid.
Okay.
A gaffer or a Foley artist. Those were the two things that I wanted to be. I would read the credits. Oh, Foley artistry was, I can still sit there and just watch the mastery that comes with supporting video, to be really honest. I think some of it as an early creator, because we didn't have great microphones on cameras. I did know how to plug in sound cords into the VCRs and get wired to VCRs to do some like fancy editing and dubbing.
So somebody could get you to stop that flashing 999 January 1st thing, right?
That was
okay,
me.
That was you. They'd call you. Okay.
So I want you to, the tech space and creativity has been interesting to me because that was my entry in. I'm like an Excel spreadsheet guy, and I ended up figuring out how to run a talent database that led me into organizing casting opportunities. That is where I got trained to be in talent development. And then because of where I was at MTV, having inventory to a network or dozens of MTV networks during the time that I was there, like that was exponential growth in TV.
Sure.
But
how did you get to MTV though? Like
I was trying to be a Foley artist. So here I am on Staten Island. I think we had the Staten. They just changed the name, but when I was growing up, it was the Staten Island Basic Access Channel.
Okay.
And I volunteered as a junior in high school. I was on the other side of the island, so it started off with parents taking me there, and then it ended up with taking the bus an hour back and forth. But I loved learning the control room. I loved learning the switchboard. I learned TV. My years, like, so if I'm 93, if I'm a junior in high school, to 98 is when I graduated. 99 is when I graduated college. Napster, file trading, digitizing of our discs on computers.
Thick and fast.
I saw music and I saw video as files, and I knew that I could move it. So not only was I the person who had to fix, the controls on the screen, but I could get all your photos scanned in so you can have your first photo, your first profile photo, or
that used to be really hard.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, you needed equipment to be able to do that. I chose my college, Wagner College. I chose my college because it had a computer center that was robust, that they had really invested in. And I spent hours, and I got a job my freshman year there, and I spent hours MIDI. I remember being in high school and we're using MIDI audio for rehearsals for our spring musicals for Grease and Pippin.
Wow.
So audio for me, and especially as audio was applied to theatrical performances, because I really wanted to be a Broadway producer. Like if you asked me as a kid around this age now, what are you going to do with all this TV work? It was just so I could be a Broadway producer. That was like, I don't know, what a weird, you don't need TV skills to be in Broadway. You need people skills and money skills and creative skills to be on Broadway. But in New York, everything for me happened in Times Square, and that was how the mind was wired. And TV, the advent of TV just really blew up. And then of course, in 84, MTV gets introduced, and 7 or 8 when that got launched. And I think I was maybe 15 when we finally got cable that I could watch, these masterpieces. By then they were masterpieces of communication. And I could make a Duran Duran playlist and give it to a friend as my way of saying, hey, I'm gay, this is me, and these are my tastes. I can put so much energy into the nuance of creating around music.
Sure.
Happy Meals used to have little discs, like records. We used to come back with records.
I remember.
I loved it. I loved audio. Audio was the one thing that I could bring into my home for Thanksgiving Day family shows, when it's time to put those on. Or,
sure.
And I always make fun of my brother, Joey. I love you so much, Joe, but we used to be in his room and we'd have to be quiet when he was recording the radio because we didn't know if it recorded audio in the room or the radio. So it was so fascinating. And I did not have access to a video camera as a child. I did not have a radio the way that I have a camera or a TV screen that I can manipulate video. So audio for me was gigantically impactful. Also, I'm thinking of Bobcat Goldthwait, like the
oh my God,
Police Academy, like the sounds, all the unique ways that people stood out. I have an ear for it. I don't know if there's, maybe you know the term. I have an ear for like the music, the words. Like
I'm the same way. I'm exactly the same way. Yeah. I do performances sometimes, very rarely. I'm a singer. So I do performances with a 9-piece band once a year.
Wow.
And every time we're on the stage, I need an iPad. I have to look at my lyrics.
Yeah.
I can remember the tune and everywhere I'm supposed to come in with harmonies and all of that stuff. Like, I don't need notes at all. I don't read a note of music. So I can memorize all that. That I have in my head, but there's no room for the lyrics.
Wow. You just threw me back, because now I'm thinking about how I harp on music in fourth grade, unfortunately, because my parents made some decisions about drugs that had nothing to do with me. I got to experience rehab as a young child to see what parents were like in rehab and be in Al-Anon and Alateen. And I remember just sitting down, creating content and trying to figure out how to express myself, how to get content out there. I love the idea of being a musician, and I wanted to be a musician so bad. And in fourth grade, they give you the test for music, and I got just the way it was explained to me. I thought low notes were high notes, because to me, they're on like the left side of the keyboard. So if you take if you kind of turn it this way, then left is higher and the high notes are kind of lower. And I kind of had it I had it completely backwards. And so long story short, I was told that I didn't have musical talent, and that really upset me, because I wanted that outlet, not more so than basketball after school. I wanted to be in a band.
That's such an awful thing to do to a kid, though.
But you know what? I self-taught. I didn't quite know what the notes were called, but I self-taught myself to sight sing.
Yep.
And I didn't realize this until maybe a few years ago. I ended up getting a scholarship at Wagner College for vocal performance. I too, like a little tenor myself. But I never considered that as a success. I thought that was just like, you got a scholarship and I went to college and that's what you're supposed to. I got a scholarship in the thing I was told I wasn't great at. And I had to sit back and just soak in that for a second.
Pat yourself on the back for that, because that's pretty awesome.
I didn't let it stop me, I don't let that passion stop me. I create space for it. And
it's all about creating your own space. Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, I was not in the music program because I didn't read music, and I didn't really want to read music. It wasn't really like the whole idea of it.
Class and training.
No. But I was involved in other things. But I remember that the jazz teacher approached me to join the after school program for music, and I was doing all of the really complicated like harmonies and such for the alto section in a quartet, right?
Yeah.
And the alto has no bearing on the melody. It's like it doesn't have anything to do with the melody.
Yeah.
It's all about supporting everyone else. And the only way that I could learn this was by my teacher plonking out the notes on a keyboard on a piano, recording them, and sending me home with a tape to memorize. I memorized them, and that was how I was in the quartet.
Oh my gosh. I have a shoebox of tapes that we're always like, should we digitize these? I was like, no one needs to listen to those. Me singing Sweeney Todd for 10 hours. The musicals were different back then, and then until Rent came out, the musicals were very different. So
yes, they were. Yeah.
But that's fascinating. So from music, and then MTV was culture for me, which I liked, and I appreciated that. I had younger siblings, so when I got to MTV, that was kind of neat, because my siblings thought that was important, and that was sort of where I was getting my those two were who I was looking at seeing if I was doing the right thing in the world. I got to support Celebrity Deathmatch, which was an animated show in casting, and I came up with this concept of, instead of having in-person, I wonder if you would like this. I came up with this concept of having in-person castings, because we used to have in-person castings for voiceover, and I just didn't understand why we would need to see only 20 people in a day when we can give people a hotline number. They can call in, leave their voices, leave their number, almost like I wanted it to be when you're ready, not when you have to be ready. For an audition, if I can give you the space and grace to, when you're there, call us. Because that's going to give me what I need to my producers and to the casting director that I was working with back then, versus all the nerves that come into casting. So as you talk about audio, that was really, and I just became, as I mentioned, I'm a little bit of a artist and talent and actor, and I had some taste of that, but I think I brought that with me on this side of the table to make sure the room was set up. Like it was an inclusive setup, not like, how do we react to this? And how do I best support you based on what you're not getting? But how do I make sure those pieces are all there? And when you're a great listener, that job becomes suddenly easier. So I had to learn to be a great listener. Again, special skill, coping mechanism. Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
Coping mechanisms, hearing
maybe
things
not
that
one you
aren't
wanted,
being said.
but yeah.
Turn superpowers. Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah.
You know?
Make it work for you.
Even in an interview, you know, I've cast many reality shows, Housewives and hours and hours on Bravo and all over. And people would tell stories, and I'm like, but you're telling the story about someone who did something wrong to you. I understand that you're over it, but you're laughing throughout the entire story. So I don't understand if I'm not watching this, and let's pretend our executives aren't watching video, most likely they're hearing it. How am I going to get that emotion across if we're laughing about what happened, as opposed to like getting back into that moment, getting angry again, and then coming out of it and showing where you are today. So even then, I think of how I used and leaned on sound to even develop story arcs and story engines and plot lines and all these like unscripted reality shows. Because I come from a point in time where TV, where they would say, we want the loudest voice. You know what's louder than anything? Silence. If done right.
That's a good point. Silence can definitely be used to advantage in that kind of a case. Yeah. It makes you stand out when everyone else is just trying to be louder.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sure that there are lots of ways that, you know, being softer is used in advertising, for instance. I know that there are some advertisers, I just interviewed someone who use ASMR in their advertising in order to grab that attention.
Yeah, well, look, now there's science and data about that, right?
Yeah.
There's performative data that we can see actually makes an impact for certain audiences. So
totally.
Oh, yeah. As long as there's data about our creative stuff. But you know what? That's what the influencers did right, that us creators are struggling with. Facebook and Instagram, they did a good job at telling businesses what was quote unquote successful and what wasn't, and in many different metrics. And so I'm excited. All that to be said, creators on those platforms have very different types of rights than, people in the audio world of podcasting who have 100% autonomy of the content we're creating.
Yeah. Now, you had told me when we spoke before that MTV passed on the original RSS.
Oh, yeah, that's so funny. So well, I guess it's funny. Or
I just had to ask.
Yeah, it's funny or it's not funny. Like I don't even know how to say that. But Adam Curry was a big VJ on MTV, one of the original VJs, and Adam Curry actually bought MTV.com. And there's a big lawsuit in 2001, I think it was Adam Curry versus MTV, where MTV then wanted MTV.com back. I was, as a staff member, I went from Vinnie Potestivo at MTV.com to at MTVstaff.com. I remember them saying, we're a TV network. Why would we ever need a website? Like, what is the website have to do with a TV network when you can just turn on a TV and not have to go to the website? So I was at the network when that was happening. We didn't buy MySpace. Wow. It was very interesting, about that world. RSS, the really simple syndication, the structure of audio file, user, individual approach, was developed by Adam Curry. And it was something that, again, I think MTV, you know what? I'm gonna say this. MTV sure did play an impactful role in music and amplified music, but what it didn't do is get into the business of music, even the same way YouTube has gotten into the business of music. By the way, all of the heads of music over at YouTube were everyone that I worked with at MTV. So it's like a
okay, everybody.
It came. I'll say this at Viacom. So Viacom MTV from '98 to '07, we didn't, or '05, we didn't have production companies creating our content. We did it ourselves. I worked on the first season of Punk. I worked on the first season of the Osbournes, and then and then Punk'd my job on Punk'd turned into the celebrities are mad that we punked them and they won't sign the release. Can you work something out where we can maybe make it right and make it nice? And then oftentimes, by the way, because you know me in the room, I like to make change that's impactful forever. I'm not about this moment. And I would come back and I would say, y'all, Christina Milian, if you're hearing this, I love you. This is a great example. I was like, y'all had Christina auditioning for like a superhero film. You know what those superhero contracts look like for the rest of your life when those residuals are coming in? Like, she thought, that's a little too far. Like that's going to ruin not only our relationship, but like we're kind of ruining her. Like that's like life damaging. Like I said earlier, someone told me I wasn't successful in music. I could have quit from that. You know, one bad experience, unfortunately, could ruin it. So, and they listened. Ashton listened, and Jason, all the people listened. So, again,
good to know. Yeah,
close at work, but they didn't. MTV didn't get involved in the business of music. You know, at that point, they would give labels some money to offset the cost of video production so that labels had a budget to start spending on. But during my time at MTV, when YouTube came out and a couple of other, for 20 years, no one touched music videos because that's what MTV played or VH1 played, you know?
Yeah.
Or it was in the nightclubs or something like that. Yeah, right? Like everyone was like, oh, they're doing it, not me. And now we're like, well, they're doing it, so it works for them. Let's do it for us. Like, let's... And that model changed. So music videos went from obviously premiering on MTV to like, are we going to get the world premiere or is YouTube going to get it? And we're like,
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then they
had
changed.
Some competition.
So why would MTV pay for videos or partially pay for videos? Because it was more like an upfront where there's a allotted amount that was probably given at the top of the year and then they had to allocate it.
Yeah.
But this is where we get into bundling and packaging. And as an artist, especially an audio artist, understanding the rights that you have to sampling and to all of the ways that we know how to create our own content and own it and monetize around it. It's just, again, very different than it was 5 years ago, let alone 25 years ago.
It's tough for musicians now. I mean, oh my goodness. And like you, I saw the whole Napster thing unfold and now we have Spotify. And then there's like, everything that is basically making sure that everything a musician does is free.
Yeah, right. I mean,
everything they put out, no one wants to pay for.
Tracked and I think tracked and traceable, right? IAB, and like there's certain ways that we feel confident in X amount of downloads on YouTube and on Spotify, like as you say, that there's that those platforms now have relationships with those artists directly versus maybe when I was at MTV, those platforms might have had a relationship with the label, even though the labels clearly got Napster to go away. So there's some they saw what was coming, but hey, that's the evolution of the talent brand. That's just. Now, a lot of the artists that I can think of that are in that example that you just described there no longer have labels. They became their own. I mean, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Bandy Moore, like these people are like, what? This is my turn, my rules, my music, my team, my term, my people. I want to control everything from how they experience buying tickets. I understand. What a painful thing if Ticketmaster is going to ruin your relationship of all the hard work you do to be an amazing, empathetic artist. So,
no one wants that.
Ain't nobody got time.
Exactly. But then still you have artists who are having to make many more dollars than they actually end up with in their pocket.
Yeah.
To pay not only, their staff, totally understand that. Anyone who's working with them, but then to pay the labels and to pay everyone that's promoting them and all of this stuff. Like you need to make 100 million to make 20 million.
Yeah.
It's,
I love that you say
we're talking millions.
Yeah. I love that you say pay the people. Again, I'm like, during my time being, it's so funny to say that, but during my 10 years at MTV, they got rid of payola plagola in radio. Like that was a really big thing that was happening and it impacted me directly. It impacted me. I went from being invited to go to Cabo to go listen to the Simple Plan, out. I don't even think it was Simple, but it was some soundtrack or some album or they would be these gigantic experiences that equalize it. So it's funny we talk about artists needing to pay to, get on certain platforms or whatever, but that Payola Puggle, that's just shifted. That's changed. There's favors. There's long-term relationships now that are coming from, big companies that are supporting these platforms. I imagine it's tougher for independent artists, especially musicians, to cut through the sort of premium, let's say like the top 1%. But I would say that, in my opinion, that the entry level into the industry has changed significantly. You no longer need, a Vinnie Potestivo, MTV casting director, to tap you on the shoulder at an NSYNC concert and say, you got to look, come into, you can now create your own content and be found on your terms. And that's gigantic.
So a quick question for you then. What would you advise up-and-coming musicians to do now for their careers? Is there something in particular that you would say they should be really looking at seriously?
Yeah, create it. To be really blunt and honest and serious, create it. Have a short-term plan, a long-term plan. Look, I don't think there are many actors that are producing their own films that don't have slates that understand time. So maybe this year we'll get this project out. This year we'll get... So for me, it's about creating, because in creating content, you're able to demonstrate it's not even about demonstration. It's not even about fake it till you make it. It's about make it till someone can take it to the next level. And if you're out there creating content, if you're able to give us executives on this side of the table who are buying content or helping distribute content, if you can give us the pieces that we're looking for, or to be really honest, that one unique thing that you do best that no one else does. It could be a tone in your voice. It can be the way you roll your R's. It can be the acoustic. It could be so many things that you do that we just need that one example to bring into the head of Disney to say why you should be the voice. It's one example. But what I will say it's harder now is getting executives or platforms to purchase something based on what they believe or what they can't see. So like, you used to be able to say, here's 5 women, these are the things that they're going to do. We don't quite know what's going to happen. Here's some organizing principles. Let's go shoot and figure that out. Now they want to know a lot more about what's coming, what's finite about that skill set. And I think that creating content is going to help you stand out, and your audience will help you get to where you need to be. In fact, if we're in the creator economy now, and you are a creative, whether it's an audio or video, and you were looking for what's like my 5-year strategy, I would strongly lean into building a community. Okay. I think that making sure that the content you create is going to be community building more so than hit a goal or a note or a value that you feel is necessary, but making sure that goal value that is necessary supports the community. I think the community economy is coming next. The people who can really hold an audience, there's value in that. And look, we're seeing it in TV. Oof, what a spicy TV season right now with real people getting really let go in real time, like real decisions being made from courts and audience sides and executives. Like and the responsibility finally in public media where they're creating content that they're not just mindful of, but they're supportive of. There's after shows and there's resources that are being offered now for these series. It's really mindful. But I think any creator out there, create. It's the best way to create. And if you're having a hard time create, then collaborate. To be honest.
Good point. Yeah.
Collaborate. And there's so many awesome platforms now where you can do that. Podcasting, no one owns podcasting. Ain't no like 5 white older men who own the entire industry, like television or some other, we do. Now, I trust Jodi. I'm here with Jodi. Like, this is her, this is your place. Like,
sure.
How could I show up? I'm not nervous about saying the wrong thing in front of 1 million people on some like news channel where no one in that room has control to say we can remove it. It always seems, and I've been in that room, and it's always like, well, where else is this other room? where else do we got to keep going that? And
it's funny that I think podcasting creates a safe space for people to really say whatever they want to say. Now, I mean, that can be for good or bad.
But they have a right to do that.
Exactly.
They have the space, and it's not funded by a company that's on a stock exchange that has hundreds of millions of owners where they're telling them what they can and can't or should or shouldn't do, per minute. And again, as a creative, finding someone to collaborate with. I mean, at the end of the day, creating for me is about getting an idea from the inside to the outside. So that's walking Jodi through a song or telling you about a story that I got to turn into a product, like whatever that process is. I turn to people. I always have turned to people to serve. And I would never, it's so weird to say this. When I want something most, I turn to people. And when I wanted to be in podcasting so bad 2 years ago, I really wanted to be in it. I said, how can I make a splash? I said, I'm just going to create, I have a podcast.com as a stage to amplify and see all the people I'm meeting. So I can really get to know you and soak in all of your episodes and then publish, back then when I keep saying back then.
How far back
Jodi,
was this?
Jodi, back when verification couldn't be bought. This is so weird that we're having this conversation of is that the timeline to content? It's crazy how it shifts, but and those goals. So it was just, so showing up to serve.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.